Spider-Man is one of my favorite superheroes of all time and is my favorite Marvel hero. But with nearly 60 years of comics behind him, Spider-Man has had plenty of villains both big and small. And with the whole multiverse of options potentially opening up come Spider-Man No Way Home, what better way to celebrate than seeing which big bads we'd like to see on the big screen? That's what we're exploring today. Greetings Nerd Squad and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. I'm your host Connor Monroe and this is the top 10 Spider-Man villains we want in the MCU. Let's do it. And it's 10 Chameleon. Being the first villain Spider-Man ever faced way back in Amazing Spider-Man #1 in 1963, I think we're due for a Chameleon appearance in the MCU, and honestly, I think we could be getting it. With the build up to No Way Home on the horizon, with the movie planning to come out this Christmas, I have a sinking feeling that what we'll be seeing isn't exactly a multiverse of villains, but rather Chameleon taking on these other appearances. We've already had a theory of the Chameleon being present in Far From Home, especially since John Watts revealed that it would be great for the Chameleon to appear in Far From Home before settling on Mysterio, and with the insane technology being present in the MCU at this point, they could really do anything they wanted. So Chameleon really being the villain in No Way Home is certainly what I'm betting on. It would make people mad for sure, but it would be such a good twist. The only way I'm not going to believe it is until either after the movie's done or if we see two villains at the same time. In at 9, Rhino. First appearing in Amazing Spider-Man #41 from 1966, the Rhino, otherwise known as Alexei Setsevic, underwent an experimental procedure that gave him an artificial skin and super strength. While not being the brightest or the sharpest tool in the shed, we have already seen a version of this character on the big screen during the final moments of the Amazing Spider-Man 2, which means that we may actually see him in the next Spider-Man MCU movie, if this actually does turn out to be the multiverse and not the Chameleon. However, if we do end up seeing a true MCU version, I'd rather have one closer to the original or the Spider-Man Sony video game rather than the mechanized one we see in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Just personal preference. Not everyone can have outstanding technology, right? Plus, the mech version is more along the lines of the Ultimate Universe, and after that whole Wanda Pietro thing, I'm staying well away from that. And at 8, Hobgoblin. Being introduced in Amazing Spider-Man #238 in 1983, the Hobgoblin was inspired by the work of Green Goblin and has been a moniker used by a few individuals, including the original Roderick Kingsley, followed by Jason McIndale during the late 80s and 90s, and after that Phil Urich. The character also made an appearance in the 1990s Spider-Man animated series and actually appeared before the Green Goblin made his debut in that show. With No Way Home introducing the Green Goblin to the MCU, and Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin no less, the potential for someone to be inspired by him is present, and if Norman ends up leaving his glider behind, Hobgoblin would have an easy time either stealing it or acquiring it and using it for his own nefarious means. Hobgoblin honestly used to freak me out as a kid. I can't quite remember why, but either way I'd love to see an adaptation of this character appear in the MCU facing off against Tom Holland's Spider-Man. It would also give him his own unique goblin since Tobey already got the most iconic one. And it's 7, Spidercide. Spidercide is a more obscure and odd Spider-Man villain that I still think would make a great addition to the MCU. Being first introduced as Spidercide in New Warriors #61, this version of Peter Parker is one of the clones made by Dr. Miles Warren, which is an entirely separate villain that could also appear, but I'm sure they would explain this away with someone remembering Mysterio revealing Peter's identity and then gaining a DNA sample. What's notable about Spidercide, however, is not only him having all of Spider-Man's powers, but also the ability to stretch and warp his body at will, similar to Mr. Fantastic, which could be another way to introduce the Fantastic Four to the MCU as well. Spidercide is also definitely deadly, helping Jackal to release a virus in Springfield, Pennsylvania, resulting in the deaths of over 2,600 people. Is it likely that this character will appear in the MCU? No. But would I love to see it? Absolutely. And at 6, Morbius. Michael Morbius will be getting his own movie in 2022. However, it is not planned to be a part of the MCU, rather a part of the SSU, Sony's Spider-Man universe, along with Venom, Venom Let There Be Carnage, and Kraven the Hunter. First introduced in Amazing Spider-Man #101 in 1971, Dr. Michael Morbius was a scientist born in Greece who became a Nobel Prize winning biochemist. He was suffering from a blood disease and developed an experimental treatment in an effort to cure it. Its side effects though turned him into vampire Jason, who ended up needing to consume blood in order to survive and gain typical vampire characteristics such as aversion to sunlight and the powers of flight, enhanced strength, speed, and a healing factor. His overall appearance also changed as well. He gained fangs, his nose flattened to appear more like a bat, and his skin became extremely pale like me but with less of a nose and sharper teeth. Additionally, the victims of his bite would turn into living vampires themselves, which is absolutely crazy. This character also made an appearance in the 90s Spider-Man animated animated series, however it was a kids show, so he had to consume plasma instead of blood, and his origin was changed as well when he spliced his DNA with Peter Parker's using the neurogenic recombinator and a bat jumped in front of the ray. Would I like to see him in the MCU? Of course, he's an iconic villain, but I don't know if Sony is gonna let go of the leash that they have around the other Spider-Man characters, considering how well Spider-Man's doing in the MCU and they ain't making enough profit from it. Just saying. Halfway through into number 5, Kingpin. Wilson Fisk. First appearing in The Amazing Spider-Man number 50 in 1967, Wilson Grant Fisk is a wealthy entrepreneur and philanthropist by day, but secretly is a criminal mastermind running nearly all of New York's underground activities. The character has been adapted into multiple different media, including video games, TV, movies, and cartoons as well. But could the character be coming to the MCU? It's possible, with fans speculating the introduction of Matt Murdock, also known as Daredevil, as Peter's lawyer in No Way Home. Both characters the Kingpin is associated with will be in the MCU, and considering the magnitude of that and his existence in the Daredevil Netflix series, it's certainly possible we get Wilson Fisk on the big screen. The reason people believe Matt Murdock to be in this movie is thanks to a slight differentiation in the leaked trailer versus the official one. In the scene where the files are slammed onto the desk, in the leaked trailer we can see this man's face. However, in the official one his face is out of frame. This seems to indicate the desire to keep his character secret, but is this the case, or is Marvel just pulling a double bluff? I guess we'll have to wait until Christmas to find out. In at 4, Kraven the Hunter. Kraven the Hunter is one of Spider-Man's earlier villains, appearing first in The Amazing Spider-Man number 15 from 1964. Since then, Kraven has endured as one of the web-slinger's most formidable foes, and is part of the collective of adversaries that make up Spider-Man's rogues gallery. Kraven has since come into conflict with other heroes as well, such as the Black Panther. He is also the half-brother of the Chameleon, and is one of the founding members of the Sinister Six. With the potential of Chameleon being introduced in No Way Home, we also have to consider Kraven's likelihood of appearing, especially considering how he's getting his own movie in the Sony Spider-Man universe, which means if the two universes ever merge or cross over due to some other spell gone wrong, the character will surely make an appearance or at least be confirmed, even if he's not on screen, because you know, he'll be in that universe. Kraven is one of Spider-Man's most iconic villains and is one that I see as a recurring request by fans. I certainly think that there are more interesting characters that could be used instead, but I'd still be happy to see him in the MCU. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Spider-Carnage. Spider-Carnage is my favorite alternate version of Spider-Man. Being introduced in the Spider-Man animated series from the 1990s, this version of Peter Parker shared most of his early life with the superhero counterpart. However, the difference between the two was Aunt May at some point died as well, being buried next to Uncle Ben. But thanks to some messing around with interdimensional portals by Jonathan Owen, a version of the Carnage symbiote sensed this Peter's anger and combined with him, turning him into Spider-Carnage, a villain set on revenge and the destruction of all realities. Man after my own heart. This character would require symbiotes to be introduced, but oh my god would I love to see this character on the big screen. Even if he only appeared in the final few episodes, Spider-Carnage is one of the coolest iterations of Spider-Man to date in my opinion, and is part of the reason why I love the 90s cartoon so much. Seeing this on screen would be a dream come true for me, and while it may not be possible, I want it so bad. I also want a pop figure of this character, because that would be sick. Penultimately, in at number 2, symbiotes. On a more general note, symbiotes in the MCU would also be incredible. While they are mostly, I'm sure, going to be limited to the SSU, they would be required to see Spider-Carnage or any other really insane versions of characters, like Red Goblin or even Venomized anything. Even if it's not Venom or Carnage, someone like Scream, Toxin, or even Anti-Venom would make an amazing addition in my opinion. The first appearances of a symbiote occurs in The Amazing Spider-Man number 252, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 90, and Marvel Team-Up number 141, all of which released concurrently in May of 1984, in which Spider-Man brings a symbiote home to Earth after the Secret Wars. Secret Wars number 8, which was released months later, actually details how he got the symbiote. The concept was created by a Marvel Comics reader, with the publisher purchasing the idea for $220. The original design was then modified by Mike Zeck, becoming the Venom symbiote. The concept would then be explored and used throughout multiple storylines, spin-off comics, and derivative projects. Imagine pitching something as big as that and being paid $220 for it. Well, okay, adjusting for inflation, that would be $516 now, which isn't bad honestly, but for a character like Venom, is absolutely abysmal. Finally, in at number 1, Morlun. First appearing in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2 number 30 in 2001, Morlun would be an incredible addition to the MCU, especially if they want to continue in the Spider-Verse sort of direction they appear to be starting in No Way Home. Morlun is potentially the biggest threat Spider-Man has ever faced, requiring a whole multiverse of spider people, or as they're referred to in the comics, spider totems, to take him down. Coming from Earth 001, Morlun uses these spider totems to stay alive, feeding on their energy and casually jumping from universe to universe to just squash their spider person like a bug. This guy is the backbone of the Spider-Verse concept, since a load of spider totems had to team up in order to take him down, but not without massive casualties. If they ever want a whole Avengers movie with just spider people, this would be the way to go. There we have it, friends, the top 10 Spider-Man villains we want to see in the MCU. What Spider-Man villain is your favorite, and who would you want to see in the MCU? Not even just Spider-Man villains, literally anyone. Be sure you let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been and shall remain Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video.